There is a lot to learn in Stellaris, so much that a video covering everything would easily run over an hour long. Can't imagine anyone who would make something like that. But if you want the short version, then today I'm going to go through 10 tips to help you go from an absolute beginner to a somewhat capable emperor of your own galactic empire. These are in no particular order, so don't worry about that, and let's get started. Number 1, automate as much as possible when you're starting out. Look, I know some people who've played the game for a long time will disagree with this one, but I stand by it. When you are first learning the game, as in your very first game of Stellaris, there is so much to stay on top of at the same time. Obviously, you should aim to eventually understand everything and manually control as much as possible to really make the most of every mechanic. But when you are just trying to get through your first game to figure out if you're going to make use of that 2-hour return window, you'll probably want to automate at least a few things to make the game easier to understand. Planets are one of the best examples, as they can be very complex to manage, especially once you have quite a few of them. Setting them to automate construction will ensure they're built up over time so you don't fall behind. Without having to work out the optimal planet builds from minute 1. Your ships can be automated in a number of ways, depending on the ship, but science ships in particular should pretty much always be working with some form of automation, whether that's surveying the map, researching anomalies, or working on any special projects. When construction ships aren't claiming new systems, they should be on automatic construction to ensure you're exploiting every resource you can. Research can be automated to keep you moving through the tech tree, and whilst tech is one of the easier things to understand, I won't judge you if you just want to get rid of the alerts and focus on something else. You can also automate pick and leader skills. Again, this one is pretty simple since you just pick a skill to buff whatever job they're already doing, but again, I won't judge. Going hand in hand with automation is designations. Now, whilst they don't have to be paired with automation to work, the features work great together for a number of reasons. The designation of a planet is pretty much its main purpose, so an alloy world will focus mainly on producing alloys. All a designation does without automation is give planets modifiers to their productions. So whilst an alloy world would be better at producing alloys, you'll still need to build industrial districts and alloy producing buildings to make the most of those modifiers. However, once you enable automation, you're not only getting those modifiers in place for any existing production, you're also telling the planet automation system what to focus on when building up your planets. Regardless of whether you're using automation or not, you should be using designations, and when deciding, you're just going to look at 2 things: what you need and what the planet is best suited to provide. If it only has a maximum of 2 mining districts, then obviously a mining world is out of the question, so just pick whatever fits both criteria and you're off to the races. Worst case scenario, designations cost nothing to change, so you can always respec them later. Tip number 3 is be prepared, and yes, I am taking this one from the scouts because they were cooking, what can I say? In a game as big as Stellaris, things can surprisingly turn on a dime, so you really need to be ready for anything. In general gameplay, this means stockpiling resources so you can ride out any economic crisis without taking too big of a hit to your progress. For warfare, however, you always want to be ready for any potential conflict. You don't want to be scrambling to build fleets after war has already been declared, as you'll almost certainly take substantial losses before it's even close to ready. From the start of the game, you want to build up your fleets as you go and make sure you spread them throughout your territory. If a neighbor is being mean over your shared fence, station a fleet close to your shared border to react should things turn south. Whilst you're at it, build up a defensive starbase for that fleet to dock at just to be safe. And inversely, if you're considering attacking someone, make sure you build your fleets and place them on your borders beforehand so you're ready to go as soon as the declaration hits. This one really boils down to always having a standing military ready for action. It can be easy to forget with everything else going on, but you'll quickly remember why it's important if you get caught with your pants down. Next up, ABT, always be trading. This one really comes down to buy low and sell high, and that actually has a great double meaning here. Your resources will fluctuate over the course of a game, and at points, you'll likely be producing far too much excess of something or not enough of something else. Simply sell the resources you have lots of and use that added income to buy whatever you don't have lots of. It seems incredibly obvious, but I never really think to buy things unless I'm already in the red. Resources like minerals and alloys, you can never really have enough of, as they allow you to build up planets, fleets, and just about anything else you could build. Especially if you have planet automation, you may not be in the red for minerals income, but normally you'll always be running out of them, so it never hurts to have plenty in the bank. In a perfect world, or galaxy in this case, you want to be full of all resources, so just make sure you're selling excess and buying whatever you have the least of to fill the gap. Oh, and a bonus tip: build resource silos or on-planet resource storage every now and then. Having a high max resource capacity will literally never hurt, as it gives you more of a buffer when you hit a huge expense. You don't want to go too crazy, but a couple here and there will go a long way. Number 5, make some friends. Yep, I'm going to make like your mum and tell you on the first day of school to make some friends. Look, if you're playing as a fanatic, racist, military industrial complex, then this probably won't apply unless you have the Imperium of Tesla in your game. but for the vast majority of empires, it doesn't hurt to make some friends. You don't need to go all the way to third base federations, but at least getting some buddies to share non-aggression and potentially economic and research pacts with will be a great move. The galaxy is a cold, unforgiving place, and if you find yourself as the loner with no friends, you're going to have a lot more to worry about than you would if you simply got a pal or two. Not only are friends one less empire to worry about declaring war on you, they also open the door to powerful bonuses like the aforementioned packs. Embassies and survey data let you gain vision over a huge portion of the map. Open borders allow you to explore more of the galaxy without risk of being attacked. Migration treaties allow you to potentially colonize planets that were previously uninhabitable depending on the species. Like I said, if you're planning on burning the galaxy and everyone in it, then don't worry about making friends, but for basically everyone else, they're great to have for all kinds of reasons. Number 6, colonize them all. Okay, I know this one sounds really bad coming from an English person, but I swear I'm just talking about the game. This one really is all in the title. Do you see a planet in your borders that's green for habitability? Colonize it as soon as possible, because literally, why would you not outside of some very specific circumstances? Planets are the main way you earn most resources, so you really can't have too many of them, especially early on, and especially if they're already in your borders. If you spot a green planet on the other side of the cosmos, then sure, leave that for someone else. But one next door to your capital already in your borders, go for it as soon as possible. You should also be coming back to check habitability whenever you make a new migration treaty, as previously uninhabitable planets may now be usable. And of course, if there's a particularly stubborn planet, then get that thing terraformed as soon as you're able. Number 7 is don't stretch too thin. Have you ever heard that fact about the Roman Empire and how it collapsed because it became too big to manage? Yeah, that's pretty much what happens in Stellaris. Sure, you might not collapse and totally lose control, but the game becomes a lot harder, slower, and not to mention less fun. Look, managing 10 planets is plenty, so once you get to 50 or 100, it very quickly gets old. And besides the IRL mental strain, your empire size in-game will also very quickly get out of control. For every point you go over 100, you will start to reduce the efficiency of your empire and require more resources to complete the same goals. Everything will slow down and become less efficient, and whilst you can technically keep playing, it does tend to make things a lot more difficult. Now I know what you're thinking. I want to paint the map and own every single system in the galaxy and rule as Supreme Emperor, and I hear you, believe me, I do. So with my next tip, let me introduce you to the joy of vassals. Alright, so painting the map is great and all, but you can kind of do that whilst keeping your empire at a manageable size with vassals. These are essentially your pet empires that kiss the ring, the one on your hand, and do whatever you say whilst giving you a large chunk of their resources. Put plainly, it's a way to control territory without having to manage it or worry about empire size. You can gain vassals through 3 methods. First is wars. You can just set the vassalization war goal, and if you beat the other empire, they'll roll over and become your vassal. The second method is to simply select a sector of your own empire and break it off into its own vassal empire. And lastly, you can convince another empire to become your vassal through diplomacy. Whatever way you do it, you technically remain in control of a large chunk of the map, harvest some of the resources the area produces, and don't have to deal with the admin or empire size. They do have some management of their own to keep them happy with the agreement, but it's a lot less faff than managing the territory yourself, so it's an overall win. For number 9, we have speedrun your wars. Now, you don't need to actually speedrun per se, but you want to aim to end wars as quickly as possible for a few reasons. First of all, war exhaustion adds up over time, no matter what's happening, so the longer one goes on, the more likely both sides are to give up the ghost, even without any combat, and you don't want to lose via countout. Secondly, when you're at war with another empire, you are generally sending all of your fleet power towards that empire. So, what if your war goes on for so long that someone else decides to attack you at the same time? Now you're going to have to split your fleets in 2 and fight half a war on both sides, which will almost never work out well for you. And thirdly, simply put, wars cost you resources. They are a resource drain with the constant alloys for reinforcing fleets, not to mention lost production for any systems or planets you lose. They cost you pretty much every moment you're in one, so you want to wrap them up as soon as you can. My tips for doing this are to stack your fleets on the target's border before war even starts if possible. Also make sure you build up any armies you need for invading their planets. As soon as war begins, move in your fleets and try to use your power tactically to make use of smaller fleets to take systems without much defense, and send your larger fleets to take on those fortified systems with defensive fleets. Speaking of which, eliminate enemy fleets as soon as you can to make sure they won't take your territory or retake their own. Just cause as much damage to the hostile empire as fast as possible so you can get that war exhaustion to max as soon as possible and claim victory as soon as you can. The quicker the war is over, the faster you can get back to whatever else you're doing, whether that's gearing up for another war or terraforming a planet inhabited by a pre-FTL civilization. And lastly, use all of your leaders. This one is pretty obvious, but what tips list is complete without something that seems really obvious and yet is easily forgettable? Over the course of the game, your capacity for the various kinds of leaders will increase as you complete certain research projects and progress into the late game. You should be using as much of this capacity as you can at all times, because otherwise, you really are leaving value on the table. For example, you should recruit as many scientists as possible and get them all to work in ships to map out the galaxy and research anything interesting you stumble across. Officials should be governing as many sectors and planets as possible, manning council positions, working for federations, and of course the galactic community. And commanders want to be leading your armies and fleets to ensure they're battling to the very best of their ability. Again, all of this seems very obvious, but I know I'll forget and then remember 2 hours in that I can get a couple more scientists or govern that sector that's underperforming, and I'll feel stupid for not noticing it earlier. As long as there is something for them to be doing, then get them hired and put them to work. You will almost always get a huge return on your investment, especially if you keep up with choosing their skill points. And those are my 10 tips for new players of Stellaris. There's about a million more things to learn in game, so leave your best tip in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Stellaris content, then check out this video on how to start your very first game.